I'm Natasha Henry and I'm here in central London for Give Me Sport Women. We've been chatting to Ellie Norman, the Marketing and Communications Director of Formula One. We spoke about farms, fast cars and the future of F1. So lovely to have you here with us today, Ellie. For our viewers who don't know who Ellie Norman is, who are you?
I'm Ellie Norman. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications for Formula One.
So this is a new role for you and for the company. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got here? What was your professional background before this?
Yeah, sure. So delighted actually to be here. I think I'm so fortunate to wake up every day and genuinely love what I do. And I started my journey obviously from sort of a much younger age, but I've always had a love and a passion for sort of cars, and that's never gone away. So my first job out of school was actually in an advertising agency on a car account.
Perfect job.
Exactly. A-levels, out of school, into work, and that's where I started. And I've been really fortunate that I've been able to move from agency into kind of client side on the same car brand. So I had 8 years at Honda, doing the advertising and the marketing of the cars there for Europe, Middle East, Africa and Russia. So there's an aspect to that which again I love, because you're constantly working with different cultures, people, and understanding more about the world. But I was able to do that through the lens of cars. From there I went to Virgin Media and I had 5 years in Virgin Media. So learning all around sort of entertainment, completely different product, UK focus, so really deep diving, understanding P&Ls and just sort of learning more and more. And then from Virgin Media into sort of Formula One. So it's been fantastic to come to where I am now and be able to essentially marry what I'm super passionate about, which is cars and racing, but also with my sort of profession of marketing and comms since, I've done since 18.
I mean, for a lot of people, they hear marketing and comms and they don't really know what that is. So if you had to describe your job to someone, what is it that you do?
So if I describe what I do, I tend to keep it sort of pretty simple. And for me, marketing and comms is essentially about fulfilling a sort of promise to your sort of customers. So that is about, for me in this role now, it's about having awareness and interest in what Formula One is. It's about increasing people's knowledge and ultimately their sort of engagement. So anything that I do needs to contribute to the long-term sustainable growth of the business, and we will measure that as a business through how many people are in our fan base, how many people are watching it on TV and digital, and how many people are going to attend a race.
I mean, I was reading up on Formula One. They didn't have a specific marketing and comms team before.
No.
Was that a lot of pressure, or did you like the fact that you could kind of come in and say, this is what we're going to do and I've got a completely blank slate?
The first time I met my now boss, Sean Bratches, he said to me, Ellie, there's like no marketing departments. You're going to come in and we're starting from scratch. And there was that little bit of me which was like, there must be something. But when I did arrive, totally, like 2017, how can there not be this stuff? But when I arrived, it literally was nothing. And that becomes the most freeing sort of aspect to any job I've ever had. Yeah. And so I think you can either be scared by that and you can sort of go into a state of like being paralysed by how are you going to set this up, where are you going to focus? Or for me, I found it really sort of energising and motivating, because we're working as a team at a really exciting time in the sport, and you have an opportunity to contribute and be part of changing the sort of direction of something and hopefully leave a sort of positive legacy. So starting from scratch on actually how we're going to structure a team, where are we going to kind of focus on, it's been really exciting.
I saw that your team is 50-50 in terms of men and women. I mean, was that something that you really wanted to, as a woman in a male-dominated industry, particularly sport, were you keen to come in and say, you know, I want this to be inclusive, I want it to be diverse, and I want everyone to feel that they can come and be part of F1 and my team.
It's really important to me. If I think about coming back to like number one objective of like grow our fan base, that fan base across the world is going to be sort of diverse. And actually, if we are going to attract new people to the sport, for me, it's how do we sort of best represent that sort of internally. And by having a sort of gender balanced mixed team, it's really, really important. And the other thing for me has been taking people that have been in F1, and they are sort of the absolute knowledge bank of everything that happens within the sport, and that's such an important kind of skill. But also equally important to me has been bringing in people from outside of the industry that maybe have come from like record labels or kind of music festivals or sort of content agencies, other sports. And so we have a huge kind of mix of skill set. And so that's really important. Again, if we're going to grow the sport and take it out to new audiences in ways that work for them, then we can take loads and loads of learnings from how other sort of companies, brands, industries do stuff and bring that into F1, whilst at the same time we've got these kind of people with incredible knowledge internally. That's also really important to have. So that's definitely sort of who I am and how I like to sort of build things, because that different perspective and those different points of view are really, really important to hopefully get to a better outcome.
Is it important for you to create a team that you would have wanted to work in
years
before?
Like massively, because everyone works incredibly hard, and the most important thing for me when you're sort of building a team is that people want to come and sort of work hard and you enjoy yourself. So yes, it's always going to be sort of challenging, and I think that's a really good, healthy place to be. But people should be happy at work and want to kind of give their best. And so it's creating an environment where people are comfortable to be themselves. That's what I love seeing, is how different everyone is in the team.
I mean, we were talking earlier about the importance of young girls realising they don't need to be pigeonholed because they are girls. And my dad loves to bring up the fact that when I was like 13, I got a petition together at school to get a girls' football team. Head teacher said girls don't play football. I know yourself.
I love that.
I know. If I'd have known then, not I know now. But yeah, and from reading up on your experiences and your love of cars, I see that you were also like that from a very young age.
Yeah.
How important were your parents in allowing you to follow your dreams and not make you feel like you need to be in a box or be a certain way?
I think really, really important. I think I've been so fortunate because I grew up on a working farm, and so I'm actually one of 5 girls. So despite the fact that we're all girls, we've always grown up in an environment which potentially hasn't been seen as like a girl environment. And so from my parents' perspective, there's never been anything that says you can't go and do that. And what that did open up to me was loads of vehicles from a very young age. So whether it's like tractors, combine harvesters, like from that young age, I'm like outside climbing. I want to be the one that's steering the tractor and actually learning how these machines work and kind of engines work. So I most probably learned to drive at sort of 14, 15 in the fields, and just always had this attraction and love for cars. So as soon as I could learn to drive at 17, I was like, I'm doing this. From the moment I turned 17, I'm on a driving lesson on my birthday, because it's the only way you're going to get about.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, you can't get around when you live out in the countryside so easily. So from that age, straight into driving. I bought a track car at 22 years old.
It was a Porsche, if my research is right.
Spot on, a 968 Club Sport. I still have it.
I was going to ask you that. So when you bought it, what condition was it in?
Like a really, really great condition actually, and I bought it, and I never ever told my parents. I just came home in it.
I love that. That's brilliant. Oh, by the way,
I was like, I've just got this. They were mostly thinking, I wish you'd done something sensible, like maybe put it into a flat. But now I was like, I really want a track car.
Well, that's now a very vintage car, so it's probably worth more than a lot.
It has gone up.
I imagine you travel loads. You were saying you get up at 5 in the morning. Don't know how there's only one 5 o'clock in my day personally. But you know, is it really important to find that balance between a personal and a professional life in order, you know, we live in a world now where people are very honest about mental health and emotional health and self-care. Is having that, you know, that passion, that hobby, is that how you balance the two?
Yeah, and I think it's harder and harder to separate sort of work from play. And I think now it's more about sort of a spectrum and how you manage that spectrum. And therefore, you know, having the ability to have sort of flexible working, or, you know, people in the team, if they've got families and stuff, 100% they should be kind of splitting that with their other half. So if that means one person does morning drop off and someone else does an afternoon pickup, that's how life should be.
Yeah.
And we can all fulfill and deliver the work. It doesn't have to be within the set sort of confines of like a 9 a.m. to a this time on these days. As long as I think our work is done and we're continuing to deliver and meet and exceed expectation, then that's brilliant. And the way that sort of I do it is I talk about my shed.
Okay.
Sleep, hydration, exercise and diet.
Oh, I love that.
And that for me is how if you know all of that is intact, then I feel that I'm energized in a good place to then turn up and be the best that I can be at work.
I mean, now you're a leader, you know, it's 22 people in your team.
Yeah.
So what would you say like your key leadership principles are? Things that, like you were saying, shed is one of those.
Yeah.
What else do you think are really at the top of your list and important to ensure that, you know, you look after your staff and make sure they feel happy in their work environment?
I think things that are really important to me is being authentic and sort of having integrity. So who I am at home is the same person that I am when I'm at work. And so I'm very, very open. When I don't think something's gone or I don't gone as well as it can do, if I'm not doing the best that I think I should be, then I will be, you know, I'll share that. And I think that by hopefully seeing all of me at work as I am at home allows my team to kind of always know where they stand with me. So I just bring everything to work, being empathetic as well, open, and always being sort of authentic to who you are. I think they're really good skills to have, and hopefully by being that, your team then want to sort of deliver for all of us together.
Do you think that's something that's often missing in sport, the kind of the purity of character? You know, we see a lot of, especially competitors, they have to have a game face.
Yeah.
But if we look at the behind the scenes people, do you think that's something that's really important to bring into the office, is a kind of a personality and a purity? Does that make it easier to come to an organisation like this and be successful?
I think it's especially so in sport, and I think it's almost maybe dialed up because sport is so competitive. Maybe there is a sort of perception or a fear that if you do show sort of everything and you don't have your game face on, then people see it as a weakness. And I think it's reframing that into how do you turn that into sort of a positive. And I think someone who, well, I think is absolutely amazing, love her to pieces, Serena Williams. And
Couldn't agree more.
I just think she's the most powerful, honest, authentic female sports person out there. Top of her game, and I watched her docu-series on a flight. And it just made me cry because she was so real and authentic on taking us through that entire journey, but it really showed up who she was and her journey to kind of coming back after becoming a mother and back into kind of sport, but also some of the challenges she's faced along the way. So yeah, I mean, to see that side of her as well as just knowing she's the greatest of all time is like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was discussing with someone the other day and we were talking about being women in sport at any level.
Yeah.
You find you get a lot of preconceived views. People judge you by how you look before they've even looked at your CV or heard you speak. Is there any examples you can give us of where people have judged you, or how do you deal with that?
I'll be honest and say I don't think I've ever come up against anything where I thought I'm going to be held back, but that might just be my own sort of frame of mind of I don't like to see anything as a stop. And if something is in front of me that says I can't go that way, then my instinct is, well, how do we go around it? At the same time, it's so important that we empower women, both in sport or working within sport, sort of in the background. But at the same time, we need to continue that empowerment, but also have the support of men, because we can't do it by ourselves. And I think that sometimes there is sort of segregation. I don't think that's sort of helpful at all. And having great male advocates, sponsors, sort of mentors really, really helps, I think, to sort of pave the way and to elevate and empower women who are coming up through the ranks.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think allies are, you know, when you see someone like Andy Murray, for example, in tennis, and Lewis Hamilton and David Coulthard in motorsport, you know, they're coming out and they're supporting women. I think that shows that, you know, women aren't by themselves.
Yeah.
We were talking before about you going to school this morning and doing a talk. How important is it for you to pay it forward? You know, you're in a great position and you have great experience and knowledge to share. So is that something that you really commit to?
Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed and in a really fortunate position to be doing what I'm doing. And one of my sort of dreams is that if I can change the perception or the dream of a young person that then sort of reconsiders or thinks that they may want to get into kind of karting, or they set their ambition, their dream to kind of work in our sport, then that's a fantastic thing. So if I have sort of the time there and I get asked to go and do sort of, my school assembly this morning was with young girls from the age of 5 to 11, and even just being able to talk to them about my sort of journey and the dream that I had when I was 10, that for me is so important, because it's going to take time before perhaps we have a female driver in F1, but we have
How long do you think it's going to take?
Well, I'd love to say in my lifetime. Ever the optimist, there are some such talented women coming up through the sort of racing now. So we've got Tatiana Cauldron,
Jamie
Chadwick,
Williams as well.
Yeah, so she's now sort of a test and reserve driver for Williams. Tatiana races in Formula 2 and is a test and reserve driver for Alfa Romeo Racing. And I think the fantastic thing with these women is they're also racing alongside kind of guys, and I think that's so important that you have that kind of competitive field. I think the challenge that needs to be addressed is how do we sort of focus and encourage at a younger age that you have actually more talent that is coming through. Because you look at sort of young girls, sort of 8 to 12, there's a sort of healthier number that are doing karting, but at 8 to 10, between 8 to sort of 12 years old, it's where I think they become more self-conscious, they don't want to look silly, they don't want to be not as good as someone else, and then they kind of step out or they fall back. And I think it's how do we work with schools or kind of clubs that you continue to encourage that and you set them on a path, which is why I think it's not going to be fixed tomorrow, but we have to address that sort of younger age group, as well as continuing to sort of watch this great talent coming through now in racing.
I mean, is that something that F1 are looking to do in the future? I went to an event which was the FIA and the Formula E Girls on Track event with Susie Wolf and her charity Dare to Be Different.
Yeah.
Are there any plans for F1 to do something similar, or giving youngsters, whether it's girls or people less likely to be involved in the sport, and opportunities? There anything in the pipeline?
So we have a programme called F1 in Schools. In fact, that Dare to Be Different sort of is aligned with, so they collaborate quite well. And F1 in Schools has been going for sort of a fair few years now, and this focuses on women and all school kids actually, but it really focuses on a much broader sort of role of how you can get into the sport. And there are 56 kind of countries that take part. About 1 million kids go through the programme a year. So I think the more that we can do to build that side of it is fantastic. And to see the world finals each year is incredible, because you have people from all over the world, all girl teams, mixed teams, all boy teams, but coming together and really celebrating the sexy side of STEM, and so they are designing and building their own F1 cars, they're racing them, they're raising the sponsorship, they're designing their uniform. It's like they're mini businesses, and that is phenomenal.
That's great skills to learn at a young age, because even if you don't come into this sport, you can use them.
You can take that everywhere, and so I think the more that we can do to really sort of build and expand that is fantastic. And then I think anything longer term to really sort of help and encourage development of drivers is obviously sort of great, and that's why Dare to Be Different are brilliant with a lot of the initiatives that they have.
Esports is huge right now.
Massive.
Everyone's got their own little team now, haven't they? So.
Massive. And this year, this is our 3rd year of having a championship, Formula One Esports Championship. This year we've got all 10 teams signed up, and it's absolutely phenomenal to see how many people enter their lap times. Then they go through into like a pro draft, and to have the teams there to select the drivers that are going to represent them. And it's like the closest you're going to get to really starting to replicate what the drivers are doing. So many of our drivers will spend time gaming and in the sim. So the fact that you're in your kind of race seats and competing on the same circuits, we can bring those two worlds closer together.
Quick question about marketing and communication. So outside of F1, just in general, if someone was looking to get into a role in that industry, what tips would you give them? What do they need to learn? What do they need to consider? Or how the industry is moving?
So I think the industry is moving incredibly quickly, and I think if you're going to come into, or you want to come into kind of marketing and comms, I think we are so fortunate with the amount of technology and data that's available to us, but it's how do you use that at the same time with having the most powerful creative. And I think so often you can sort of end up focusing on one area, but for me the most powerful, best marketing still has some fundamental truths to it, which is actually what problem are you solving, or where is the opportunity, who are you talking to, and how do you kind of best reach them. And it's how you then put the creativity and the technology together to best deliver that.
So yeah, we're going to do a little quick fire round. Obviously I don't expect you to say any current people, because that would probably be unimpartial.
Oh.
So, first F1 race you went to?
First F1 race I went to was Silverstone in 2008.
Cool. Favourite F1 track?
Ooh, Suzuka.
Okay.
Japan.
Great shout. Not Singapore under the lights.
Do you know what I love though? I love the Japanese fans. Because I worked at Honda, I've still got a little place in my heart for Honda, and Soichiro Honda built Suzuka and Motegi Twin Ring.
Fair enough, can't argue that.
Good racing as well.
Favourite car?
Like ever.
Favourite F1 car ever?
F1 car or car?
Both.
Okay, so my dream car to buy one day would be a Porsche 993 RS. Okay. Last of the air cooled. Stunning. Favourite F1 car? Do you know what? I've got a real soft spot for the Brawn winning GP car, because it used to be essentially a lot of the Honda bits in there before Honda came out of the sport, and I just love the fact that Ross came in essentially as a privateer and won the championship.
F1 OG, isn't he, really? you can't knock his pedigree. Most memorable race or season?
I mean, you've always got rose-tinted goggles on, but I think looking back, I love the 80s, 86, 87, with just how fantastic Ayrton Senna was. I wonder at that time whether it would have felt a little bit predictable, because he cleaned up everything, a bit similar to Ferrari in the sort of 2000s. But yeah, I think that was a pretty good time.
Most underrated F1 driver?
That is a good question.
Thank you very much.
That's a really hard one, because I would...
Or driver that should have won a title but didn't. You could do both.
So I think Nico Hülkenberg has been driving for years and years and years. I think he's a really talented driver. So I think there's more from him to come.
Good shout. Fave driver from the past?
Ayrton Senna.
Can't disagree with that. And finally, country you'd love to see a race?
Oh.
Controversial.
Country I would love to see the race. You know, I'm going to say continent. Africa.
Well, they've got enough land. So yeah, that would work. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, let's go to Africa.
Last habitable continent that we don't currently have a race on.
Cool. I think we've got everything. Thank you so much for talking to us
Pleasure.
today. And yeah, we will be keeping an eye out on the social media and all the cool stuff coming up for Formula One this season.
Thank you.
That's all from me today. It was great to talk to Ellie, and I hope you pay attention to Gimme Sport Women and follow all of our motorsport content.